The rain poured down as I stood on the porch of what had been my home for the past 3 years, listening to my mother-in-law's shrill voice through the door. And don't even think about coming back. I adjusted the strap of my small bag on my shoulder, containing just the essentials I'd managed to grab before being thrown out. My husband David's laughter echoed from inside, joining his mother's triumphant tirade. "You really thought you could keep living here after what you did?" he called out. "Enjoy being homeless." What I'd supposedly done was refuse to sign over my inheritance to my mother-in-law's family investment fund. What I'd actually done was use that inheritance to secretly buy every property in their upscale gated community through a series of shell companies, including the house I'd just been thrown out of. But they didn't know that yet. I walked calmly to my car, the old Honda Civic they'd always mocked me for keeping even after marrying into the prestigious Wilson family. As I drove past the manicured lawns and massive homes of Oakwood Estates, I couldn't help but smile, thinking about the certified letters that would be arriving tomorrow morning. My phone buzzed with a text from David. "Don't bother trying to come back. Mother's already changed the locks. Maybe if you'd been smarter about the inheritance money, you'd still have a home." I screenshot the message, adding it to my growing file of evidence. Another buzz. "Really, Emily, what did you expect? That we'd let you keep living here after you refused to invest in the family? Mother was right about you all along." The family investment fund was actually a Ponzi scheme my mother-in-law had been running for years. I discovered the truth 3 months ago when I found suspicious documents in David's home office. That's when I contacted my lawyer and started putting my plan into motion. My phone rang. Sandra Wilson, my mother-in-law, probably calling to twist the knife. I let it go to voicemail. "Emily, dear," her saccharine voice dripped with false concern. "I know you're upset, but really, what choice did you leave us? The Wilson family has standards. When you married my David, you agreed to become part of our world. That means contributing to the family's success. Your inheritance could have done so much good for all of us. Instead, you selfishly kept it for yourself. Don't blame us for the consequences of your own actions." I pulled into the parking garage of the luxury high-rise where I'd rented a penthouse apartment last month. Under one of my new corporate entities, of course. The same entity that now owned the majority of properties in Oakwood Estates. Another text from David. "Mother says you can collect your things tomorrow. Under supervision, of course. We don't want you stealing anything." I smiled, thinking of the hidden cameras I'd installed throughout the house weeks ago. The ones that had captured every conversation about their plans to pressure me into investing in her scheme, every discussion about how they forced me out if I refused. My lawyer called as I was entering my new apartment. "Everything's ready for tomorrow, Emily. The property transfers have all been recorded. Do you want to serve the eviction notices personally, or should we have them delivered?" "Have them delivered," I replied. "I want to watch from a distance, and the evidence we gathered about the investment scheme. Send it to the SEC tomorrow afternoon, after they've had time to process the eviction notices." I ended the call and walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows of my penthouse, looking out over the city. From here, I could see Oakwood Estates, the exclusive community where the Wilson family had reigned supreme for 3 generations. The community they'd used to intimidate and control everyone around them. The community I now owned. My phone buzzed with a group text from David to his family. "Emily's gone. Mother handled it perfectly. Once she realizes she has nowhere else to go, she'll come crawling back and sign over that inheritance." His sister Rebecca replied, "Finally, I never understood what you saw in her anyway. So middle class. Remember how she wanted to keep working after you got married? As if a Wilson wife would ever need to work." What they didn't know was that I had kept working. Not at my old accounting job. I left that to maintain their illusion of controlling me. Instead, I've been quietly building my own real estate investment company using my inheritance as seed money. The rain had stopped and lights were coming on across Oakwood Estates. I could see the Wilsons' house, my house, legally, from here. Sandra would be holding court in her living room, celebrating their victory over her unsuitable daughter-in-law. My phone buzzed again. A message from Thomas, Sandra's younger son. "I know what they did wasn't right. Do you need anything?" Sweet Thomas, the only decent one in the family, the one they constantly belittled for his soft heart. I replied, "I'm fine, but you might want to start looking for a new place to live." "What do you mean?" "You'll find out tomorrow. Just remember you were kind to me." I turned off my phone and opened my laptop, reviewing the documents one last time. Property deeds, transfer records, evidence of the Ponzi scheme, transcripts from the hidden cameras. Everything meticulously organized and ready. Sandra had spent years building her reputation as the queen of Oakwood Estates. She used that position to pressure countless people into her investment scheme, ruining lives while maintaining her facade of wealthy respectability. David had followed in her footsteps, learning to use charm and cruelty in equal measure to get what he wanted. He'd married me for my inheritance, thinking I was naive enough to hand it over without question. Tomorrow, their carefully constructed world would come crashing down. My phone lit up with one last text from David before I blocked his number. Don't worry, I'll find someone younger and smarter to replace you. Someone who understands family loyalty. I screenshot it and added it to my evidence file. Then I opened the blinds wider, making sure I had a perfect view of Oakwood Estates. Tomorrow's show would be worth watching. And I had the best seat in the house. Morning brought clear skies and the sight of a FedEx truck entering Oakwood Estates. I watched through my penthouse windows as the driver began making deliveries, certified letters to every house in the community. My phone buzzed with a text from Thomas. Emily, what's going on? Mother just received some kind of legal notice and she's screaming. Before I could respond, my phone exploded with notifications. Messages from David, Sandra, Rebecca, and various other Wilson family members poured in. What the hell is this? You can't evict us. This is our house. Emily, what have you done? I smiled, remembering Sandra's words from last night. Don't blame us for the consequences of your own actions. The security cameras I still had access to showed Sandra pacing her living room, phone pressed to her ear. What do you mean the property was sold? That's impossible. I would have known. What shell company? No, this has to be a mistake. David burst into the room, his face red. Mother, did you get one too? This can't be legal. I watched as realization slowly dawned on Sandra's face. She sank into her expensive armchair, the eviction notice trembling in her hands. Emily, she whispered. It has to be Emily. My lawyer called. The notices have been delivered. SEC investigation team has been notified and will be arriving at the Wilson Investment Group offices within the hour. Are you ready for phase 2? Do it, I replied. Minutes later, every resident of Oakwood Estates received an email from the new property management company, my company, outlining the changes in ownership and new community policies, including the immediate audit of all residents' connections to Wilson Investment Group. The reaction was immediate. Cars began leaving the community as residents rushed to their banks and investment advisors. Sandra's carefully constructed network of wealthy investors was crumbling as people finally began asking questions about their money. David called 17 times before I finally answered. How dare you? He shouted. You think you can get away with this? Do you know who we are? Actually, David, I know exactly who you are. I replied calmly. A family of con artists who picked the wrong person to underestimate. We'll fight this. Mother's already called her lawyers. You mean the lawyers who helped set up her Ponzi scheme? They might be a bit busy today. The SEC tends to ask a lot of questions when they investigate investment fraud. Silence on the other end. Then, what did you do? I protected myself. Something you taught me, remember? Always look out for number 1. Another call beeped through Sandra. I conferenced her in. Emily, she said, her voice shaking with rage. Whatever you think you're doing. What I'm doing, I interrupted, is cleaning house. Literally, the new property management company will be conducting thorough background checks on all residents. Anyone connected to Wilson Investment Group's fraudulent activities will be evicted. You can't prove anything. Actually, I can prove everything. The hidden cameras in your house captured some very interesting conversations about your investment scheme. Would you like me to play back the part where you planned to force me out if I didn't invest my inheritance? Or maybe the part where you discussed which wealthy widows to target next? More silence. By the way, I continued, those same cameras recorded you throwing me out last night. Pretty clear evidence of illegal eviction, considering I legally own the property. You own. David's voice was barely a whisper. The entire neighborhood? Yes. I bought it through various shell companies while you were busy underestimating me. Remember all those times you mocked me for keeping my accounting job after we married? Turns out understanding corporate finance and real estate law can be quite useful. Sandra found her voice. We'll expose you. Everyone will know. Know what? That the daughter-in-law you abused and humiliated outsmarted you? That while you were running a Ponzi scheme, I was building a legitimate business. Go ahead, expose away. My phone buzzed with an alert from my security system. Police cars were entering Oakwood Estates, followed by several official-looking vehicles. Oh look, I said pleasantly. The SEC has arrived. You should probably prepare for some uncomfortable questions about Wilson Investment Group's finances. Emily, please, David's voice turned pleading. We can work something out. I'll divorce Mother if that's what you want. We can start over. Like you plan to start over with someone younger and smarter. I quoted his text from last night. No thank you. I prefer running my business and my properties. Speaking of which, you have 30 days to vacate the premises. Don't worry about the locks you changed. I'll have those replaced today. Sandra began to cry, not elegant tears, but ugly, angry sobs. You've ruined everything. No, Sandra, you ruined everything. I just exposed it. I ended the call and watched through my windows as the drama unfolded below. Police entering the Wilson house. Sandra and David being escorted to waiting cars. Neighbors gathering on their lawns, pointing and whispering. Thomas texted again. I just heard what Mother and David did to you. What they've been doing to everyone. I'm so sorry. Your new apartment will be ready next week, I replied. Top floor, West Wing. Consider it a thank you for your kindness. By evening, the story was breaking on local news. Prominent family behind major investment fraud, entire community under new ownership. I received one last message from David, sent from the police station. I never really knew you, did I? No, I texted back. You never bothered to try. 1 year later, Oakwood Estates had been transformed. The Wilson family was facing federal charges for investment fraud. Sandra and David had lost everything, their money, their reputation, their freedom pending trial. I kept their house, converting it into the community center that residents had wanted for years. The room where Sandra had held court while plotting to ruin lives became a daycare center. David's home office, where he'd schemed with his mother, was now a library. Thomas thrived away from his family's toxic influence, starting his own legitimate investment advisory firm. He often joked that he'd learned more about ethical business practices from watching My Revenge than from years of his family's teachings. The old Honda Civic still sat in my garage, though I rarely drove it anymore. I kept it as a reminder, not of the humiliation I'd endured, but of the satisfaction of proving them all wrong. My phone buzzed with a text from a realtor, another Wilson property up for auction. Interested? I smiled, remembering Sandra's words the night she threw me out. The Wilson family has standards. Buy it, I replied, and donate it to the women's shelter. Sometimes the best revenge isn't just success. It's succeeding in a way your enemies never imagined possible. And sometimes the people who throw you out don't realize they're giving you the keys to a much bigger kingdom. The framed eviction notice in my office tells the story better than I ever could. Below it, a simple plaque reads, "The best revenge is owning your own empire." Next to it sits my first property deed from Oakwood Estates, the one I bought the day I discovered their scheme. Because the thing about people who underestimate you is that they never see you coming. They just see you winning.